Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Billie Holiday. So let's get started. Billie Holiday is nicknamed Lady Day, and you often hear Lady Sings the Blues associated with her because of the autobiography of her life and the movie that came out in 1972. She actually became more famous after her death in 1959. She's known for her contralto voice, her distinctive phrasing, and her expressive, sad-sounding voice. She also had very strong improvisation skills despite not having any formal training. And her trademark as an artist was white gardenias in her hair, singing with her head tilted back, as you can see in this picture. Billie Holiday was born as Eleanor Fagan on April 7th, 1915. She spent most of her young years in Baltimore, Maryland. Her father is most likely Clarence Holiday, a successful jazz musician, so when she became a performer, she adopted his last name Holiday as part of her stage name. Her stepfather died in the 1920s, and her mother struggled. She often skipped school, and she was eventually sent to a reform school for troubled young girls in 1925. She was one of the youngest students at that school, only 9 years old. She left the reform school and moved to New York City with her mother in 1929. Around 1930, she began singing in local clubs, and she changed her name to Billie after the film star Billy Dove, and then she took her dad's last name of Holiday. She teamed up with a friend and saxophone player Kenneth Holland from 1929 to 1931. At age 18, she was discovered by producer John Hammond while singing at a nightclub in Harlem. Through Hammond, she started playing with Benny Goodman. In 1933, she recorded Riffing the Scotch with Benny Goodman and his orchestra, and that was her first hit. It sold 5,000 copies. After this release, her career began to take off. From 1935 to 1941, she recorded hit after hit with the pianist and arranger Teddy Wilson. She also toured with Count Basie and his orchestra in 1937, which is the picture on the left, and she toured with Artie Shaw's band in 1938. This was an amazing accomplishment for a young artist, and she was one of the first female African-American vocalists to work with a white orchestra. However, promoters and venues objected to both her unique vocal style and her race, and ultimately, out of frustration, she left Artie Shaw's band. From 1938 to 1941, Billie Holiday performed at New York's Cafe Society, which was the first integrated nightclub in New York. She developed her artist image there, which, as I mentioned before, was the white gardenias and singing with her head tilted back and her eyes closed. During this engagement at Cafe Society, she debuted what is probably one of her most famous songs, called Strange Fruit. This song is based on a poem by the same name, which spoke to one of the most horrific realities of being an African American in the South, lynching. Many scholars believe that this is the first protest song of the civil rights era. The lyrics were so controversial that Columbia Records, who Billie Holiday was signed with at the time, did not want to record it. So she went to Commodore Records, which is a small independent jazz label, who recorded it for her. Her personal life and her career saw struggles in the 1940s. She had suffered loss of her mother, she struggled with addiction, and she had turbulent romantic relationships that ultimately will change her life and her career. In 1947, she was arrested for drug possession, and she served a year and 1 day of jail time, and then she went to a rehab facility to try to recover and beat her addiction. After this setback, she had difficulties finding work because she could no longer hold a license to play in a cabaret or club. However, she could still perform in concert halls. So she booked a three-week run in Carnegie Hall, and her show sold out. After Carnegie Hall, Billie Holiday met Norman Granz. He owned several small record labels, and he also worked with Ella Fitzgerald. And in 1952, she began recording with him. And after that, she had a successful tour of Europe. In 1958, Billie Holiday recorded Lady in Satin with Ray Ellis Orchestra. And in this album, you can begin to hear the changes in her voice. So this rich, vibrant voice that she used to have now sounds coarse, fragile, and raspy as a result of her lifestyle. And at this point in her career, she began to forget lyrics and lose confidence in her performing. So she gave her final performance in New York in 1959. And shortly after this, she was sent to the hospital for liver and heart problems, and she died on July 17th, 1959, from alcohol and drug-related complications at just 44 years old. When Billie Holiday died, she left an estate of $1,000. She had made more than 100 records, but most of her famous recordings from the 1930s were mostly out of circulation. Many people didn't know her name. Even in 1938, at the prime of her career, she ranked 14th in an annual Downbeat reader poll. But this slowly changed after she passed away, and her fame has grown since the 1950s. More than 60 years after her death, all of the recordings she ever made are back in circulation. Billie Holiday was posthumously nominated for 23 Grammy Awards. In 1961, she was inducted into the Downbeat Hall of Fame, and soon after that, Columbia Records reissued nearly 100 of her early recordings. In 1972, the film Lady Sings the Blues was released with Diana Ross playing Billie Holiday, and she was nominated for an Oscar and a Golden Globe. And in 2015, Billie Holiday is inducted into the Apollo Theater's Walk of Fame. Other awards and recognitions she receives included being inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, the Erdogan Jazz Hall of Fame, and the ASCAP Jazz Hall of Fame. Today, many people would argue that she is the greatest jazz vocalist of all time.